Hello and welcome back to the Read Your Bookshelf channel. I am Catherine, and as promised, video 2 is a look ahead at what 2025 is going to be for me with books and stuff. Okay, cool. So I set my reading goal every year at 52 books. It never changes. I never put it higher, and I never actually set it lower, but I don't always hit it. If you watched my last video, I hit 50% last year. I read 27 books out of 52. So a little over 50. But it was 52 books. It's always going to be 52 books because 52 books is a book a week, which is doable for me, but a challenge. And I know there are a lot of people out there who don't like to set reading goals for themselves because then it makes reading, which is a hobby, feel like work. And I completely understand that. That is a completely valid way to do it. I have a friend who's decided that he is setting his goal to one book this year, and so he'll hit it immediately. Because last year, as he got towards the end, it felt like he was rushing to catch up. And that's not the point of setting a goal. But for me, if I do not set a goal at all, then I do not prioritize a thing. So I always set a reading goal. That way I prioritize reading. I very much over the last few years have tried to cut back on my screen time. But I set my yearly reading goal at 52 every year because I, especially over the last 4 years or so, have very much tried to cut back on my screen time. I spend a lot of time online. I'm a millennial. I grew up in the age of, the family computer, and then it just grew. And now we all have smartphones and we're on them all the time. And I mean, I'm adding content to the internet right now. But stuff like this, I find not just mindless entertainment. I love video essays. I love hearing what other people are reading. I love looking into all of that stuff, and it's fun. So, while I try to pull back on my screen time, I try to set my goal at a book a week. That doesn't always happen. Like last year, like I said, I only hit 50%, but that's been my goal. Now, for the last 2 years, I have been trying to prioritize my physical TBR. My physical TBR right now is about like 75 books. And when I say physical, it means I own them and I have not read them. And I have a specific bookshelf in my bedroom that is just physical TBR. And looking at my stats from last year, 44% of the books that I read were physical, which means that I did, in fact, read more physical books than I usually do. Kindle, I read a lot on Kindle. And I will say, some of those Kindle books last year were actually physical TBR books. Sometimes when I have like a really big book that is hard to tote around and like read out and about, I will borrow the Kindle version from the library so that I can get through it. But all I'm really trying to say here is that I normally read about 50 or 60% Kindle. And then the other 50 to 40 to 50% is split between audiobooks and physical books. And audiobooks is always between about 20 and 25%. So I just usually read more ebooks and digital things than physical books. Hi. Yes. Have you come to make yourself known? This is Lita. So that being said, for this year, I don't normally set any sort of actual TBR for like a month or anything. I'm a mood reader and I very much go on vibes. So this year, what I've decided to do is pick 12 books off my physical TBR that I am going to attempt to read this year. So that's where we're going to start today. So, first on my list is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. I purchased this book kind of on a whim, kind of because a lot of people that I know were raving about it. Um, and I've really wanted to read some shorter fiction. So a few of these on my list are novellas, short story compilations, stuff like that. I have no idea what this book is about, except that I think it's urban fantasy. I think. Couldn't tell you. But I had a lot of friends and mutuals online very much enjoy this book, so it's on my list because I own it. Next up, another one. Another, I guess, novella. All Systems Red from the Murderbot Diary series. This is, if you've been on the internet and you're in any sort of sci-fi area, you're gonna hear a lot about this series. I, again, bought this one on a whim because, again, friends of mine told me it was really good. Both of these, you will hear this name a lot. Abby influenced me to read these. She has her own Bookstagram page, Abby's Book Bag. So, thanks a lot. Next up is North American Lake Monsters by Nathan Ballingrud. If you have watched my last video, you know that I am a huge fan of Nathan Ballingrud's work. I spent quite a bit of time last video talking about both The Strange, which was True Grit meets The Martian Chronicles, and then also his novella Crypt of the Moon Spider, which was a novella, and it was all that fun stuff that he writes about. So this is a short story compilation by him that I was given at Christmas. So this is on my list also. After that, we've got If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I've seen this book floating around for a while, but no one stopped to tell me that it's about theater kids that may or may not have murdered someone. So I very much, once one of the local booksellers at my indie bookstore told me what this was about, and that it is about like dark academia Shakespeare students, asked for it for Christmas, given to me by my sister-in-law. Thank you very much. I have already started this one. I started it, I think, the day after Christmas, but then it got relegated to the bottom of my currently reading list because I tend to read 3 to 4 books at a time, because my sister got me Play Along, if you saw my last video, and I devoured that in like 2 days. After that, we've got Remina? I always say Remina. I don't know if that's correct or not. But Junji Ito, this one, I told my husband, pick one book you need me to read this year, and this was his choice. I have not read this one, but I have read Uzumaki and what else? Most of Tomi. I can't remember if there's any more. I've read a few. Always a good time. I love the way he writes his horrors. Fantastic. This next one, also an Abby pick. Cascade Failure by L.M. Sagas. I've been reading this book for like 4 months. I went through a reading slump and kind of just, it was a real bad reading slump at the end of 24. So I am about a third of the way through this, and I just got the audiobook from the library to help me so I can listen to it at work too. I've loved what I've read so far. I'm very into this. I just wasn't in the mental space to finish it. So this is one of the ones that I want to finish by the end of January. This is one of the ones that I currently am reading and want to finish by the end of January. I'm reading this and If We Were Villains right now. Next up was a pick by my sister. Funny Story by Emily Henry. I read Book Lovers in 2023, and it was one of my like 5-star books. I really liked that book. Seriously, it was one, I think, in the top 3 for that year. So I've been hesitant to read anything else. Emily Henry gets a lot of flack is the wrong word, but like it seems to be you love her or hate her kind of thing. And I think part of it is that she keeps getting recommended to me as romance, and that's not what Book Lovers was. Like, there was definitely a romance story in it, but if you're telling me that the main plot was between her and that guy, no, it wasn't. It was between her and her sister. So good. Absolutely wept. My sister and I got vastly different things out of how those two sisters interacted, but a lot of like, we understand each other things. Anyway, highly recommend that one. So I'm very much looking forward to Funny Story. Next up, this one wound up on my reading list from another YouTuber. This is Sirius by Olaf Stapleton, and this came highly recommended by Cardinal West. A few months ago, I stumbled across their video essays on xenofiction, which is fiction from the point of view of something that's not human. Xeno. A lot of times it is talking animal stories, and I freaking loved Redwall as a kid. I was obsessed with those books. Absolutely freaking loved them. So, the plot of this book had me absolutely hooked from the moment that he said it. Sirius is a dog who was like a lab experiment who gains basically sentience, and the scientist who did that brings him home, and he lives with that guy and his family. Sounded very, very interesting. Put it on my list. Purchased the book. Haven't read it yet this year, so I am prioritizing it for 24. Another short story collection, The Witcher, technically The Last Wish. I'm prioritizing some more fantasy again this year. Sci-fi and fantasy. I read a lot of horror last year, which I love horror. Don't get me wrong, we've got 2 horror books at the end of this list. But I kind of lost some momentum with fantasy and sci-fi. And I love those genres, like, a lot. So, we've got some good ones on this list. Speaking of horror, Family Business by Jonathan Sims. I freaking love Jonathan Sims' writing. I cannot recommend him enough. I have already read, 13 stories by him. And the whole reason that I read that to begin with was because of the Magnus Archives. If you are a horror person, if you like horror anthology stuff, and you have not listened to the Magnus Archives podcast, it is so freaking good. Jonathan Sims has an amazing talent for taking small everyday fears and spinning them out until there's something truly terrifying on a deep instinctual level, and I absolutely love his work. Family Business is his second novel. This one is about a death cleanup company. It's not specifically murder, but like when someone dies and has been in an area for a while, this company comes in and cleans it up. And it is a woman who is not a part of the family, but joins a family business. Really, really fascinating so far. I read the first couple chapters and then put it down because I was having a rough year. And for any of my nerds out there who enjoy the Magnus Archives, my Jonathan Sims books may all have this on the inside. It's just a fun little stamp that I own. Don't worry about it. Also, I know this is not a book, but if you did listen to the Magnus Archives and you enjoyed it and you haven't been listening to the Magnus Protocol, it's so good. They did such a good job of keeping the same vibe, but making it completely different. I cannot recommend them enough. Next on the list, Brandon Sanderson. Shadow of Self. Am I gonna out myself here? I'm not a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson. I don't dislike Brandon. I don't dislike him at all. I do dislike the Stormlight Archives. I I have not liked Stormlight at all. Well, that's not true. That's not true. And I'll maybe do an entire video on my beef with Stormlight. It's fine. But you know what I do love by him? Frickin' Mistborn. The original trilogy had me crying at the end. Absolutely weeping. Sazed is one of my all-time favorite characters in literature. I love how that entire story played out. I know that he's not super stoked about how he wrote Vin, and I can understand that, and I also accept that. But the rest of that story, like, he may have been figuring out how to write women better, and I give him props for writing some more interesting women in the Stormlight Archives. But just the types of stories that the Mistborn series is, freaking love it. This is Mistborn era 2, and this is the second Wax and Wayne book. I have already read the first one. I read it in like a day and a half. They're very quick, they're very fun, and I really enjoy what he's been doing in like a bump the series forward in time and technology. What do you do? So anyway, gonna try and at least get this book done, if not finish the second era of Mistborn. And last, but certainly not least, we've got The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. I love Stephen Graham Jones. If you watched my last video, his second book in this series, in this trilogy, was on my list of favorites from last year. Hard as Chainsaw is the first one. Don't Fear the Reaper. So this is the finale of the Indian Lake trilogy. I've had this since pub day. I just never got around to finishing it. But I'm so excited to see how this ends. Again, this is a slasher trilogy in book form. I absolutely love it. And yeah, so those are the physical books that I have on my nebulous kind of, maybe if you don't know what to read, look at this pile. So hopefully I can get these 12 done this year. Other than physical books, the other things on my list that I need to read this year, and these ones I actually do need to read, are my arcs. First up, I think this is the first one that needs to get read. House of Blight by Maxim M. Martineau. I heard that this is romantasy. I heard that this is one of the better ones coming out in the next year. And I heard that from Jenna over at Live a Thousand Lives on Instagram. One day in her stories, she was talking about this book and how she wanted to talk about it so badly with someone, but like, it's an arc because it doesn't come out until 25. So yes, this comes out April 8th, 2025. So this is the first one up on my list. The next one that I have on my list is Death at a Highland Wedding, and it is coming out May 20th. There we go. This book is in a series, I believe it's the third or fourth in the series, and it is by Kelly Armstrong, and I know nothing about the series. I was sent a link for this book through NetGalley. Every once in a while, if you have rated certain books high, you will kind of come across the desks or feeds or what have you. I don't know how it works. I've never been in publishing. And a publisher will reach out to you and give you a link and offer you one of their upcoming books. That's how I got this one. I get a couple every year. I do not get a lot. This sounded silly and fun. Apparently, it's a time travel novel where this woman's been like bounced back in time and she works with some sort of investigator or something. And so, yeah, she's gonna go to the Highland and there's gonna be a death at a wedding. And that's pretty much all I know about it. And last but certainly not least, this one comes out August 5th. A Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reed. This is the sequel to A Study in Drowning, which tied as my favorite book of 2023. I loved that book so much that I bought a copy for my sister and my sister-in-law and my other sister-in-law. Did I buy it for all three? I think I bought it for all three of them. And I like, just, please read this. That book stands alone. I absolutely loved it. It was an immediate 5-star read from me. And I think it is such an absolutely fantastic depiction of young womanhood in a lot of ways. And I want to talk more about it. And maybe I will now that it's been out for a while and now that I have a YouTube channel about the different parts in play there that make me like it so much. But yeah, it stands alone. I did not think it was getting a sequel. I did not think it definitely doesn't need a sequel, but that's not to say that this is going to be a bad sequel. I'm hoping that this is as good as the first one. I'm actually really excited. So, anyway, those are the 3 that I currently have. I try not to read more than 12 arcs in a year. Try to kind of keep it to 1 a month because otherwise I'm a mood reader and I will fail. So I asked for House of Blight and I asked for A Theory of Dreaming, and then the other one was offered to me. So I have room for a few more. As far as books are concerned, these are my 3 that I absolutely must read, and then 12 that I'm really going to try and focus on this year. And that's pretty much it. Do you have a most anticipated book coming out this year? Are any of the books that I have listed books you've read? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think I'm insane and my taste sucks? Let me know. Leave me a comment. I've gotten a few subscribers since last time. If you've subscribed, thank you. If you haven't, do you want to subscribe? Other people have. That means that maybe my videos don't entirely suck. Or maybe they do, but that's fine. So go ahead, like, subscribe, comment, all of those things that I'm supposed to ask you to do at the end, because apparently just saying it makes those numbers go up. Anyway, okay, thanks, bye.